Warning. You've reached On the Box with Ray Comfort and are now in a biblical truth zone. Place all questions about theology, current events, and evangelism on the box, where they'll be weighed against the truth of God's Word. Ready your hearts and minds. You're about to be inspired and equipped to fulfill the Great Commission. Programming to engage in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to On the Box. I am Mark Spence alongside
Alan Pearson.
There he is. Haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, it's been about a month, I think.
It's good to see you. And over on into the dean's desk, we have the Bradley Snow, the web designer extraordinaire. There he is. You make wearing glasses look classy, Brad. I think I should start wearing glasses.
Going for nerdy.
It would make me look smarter, I'm sure of it.
Now, are those contact lenses, or do you?
Are.
They are.
Nice of you to notice.
Oh, they're nice. You got nice eyes there, Alan.
Thank you.
All right, today on the show, we are going to be discussing why people don't like talking about religion. And when somebody says, I don't like talking about religion, what do you say? What do you say when somebody says, you know what, that's just not my gig. You got your gig, I've got mine, and religion, honestly, quite frankly, it's not part of my gig. So grab a hold of your religion and walk out the door. What do you say to somebody who says that? We want to talk about that here. And if you have questions, On the Box at livingwaters.com. That's where you want to get a hold of us at. We also have a Facebook. You ever visit that?
All the time.
I don't.
It's my homepage.
And is it really?
No.
Okay. Twitter.
But it sounded good.
And we do have our blog. So take a look at our blog at onthebox.us. Well, Ray and Easy will be back tomorrow. They're gone still. And now next week, I'm told they will be at the Bible Bee. You want to keep that in prayer. Ray will be giving the keynote address to all the people that will be talking out there, and that is an amazing event.
It has. I've attended twice, and it is an incredible event, and I'm thrilled that Ray will be the keynote speaker this year. It's a great opportunity for us.
Boy, if you're in that area, you want to come listen to Ray in person. He's a great guy to work with, but he's an amazing guy to listen to. His spiritual depth concerning things evangelistic and just the Bible in totality are really deep, and so we're very privileged to work alongside of him. Grateful for that. The Evidence Bible quote of the day. It's by a guy named D.L. Moody. He says, "It seems perfectly reasonable that God should have given us a glimpse of the future, for we are constantly losing some of our friends by death, and the first thought that comes to us is, where have they gone? When a loved one is taken away from us, how that thought comes up before us, how we wonder if we will ever see them again, and where and when that will be. Then it is that we turn to this blessed book, for there is no other book in all the world that can give us the slightest comfort, no other book that can tell us where the loved ones have gone." And that's the beauty of the Bible. The only book that dares to tell us things that actually take place after this life, but even before that, things that will take place just in our near future. It's prophecy. The only book that dares to stand on a limb and share with us things that will come to pass before they come to pass. We have all kinds of prophecy dealing with the Messiah, but also prophecy just in the end times, things that will happen. The book of Daniel and the book of Revelation obviously are two of the greatest books when it comes to prophecy. But there's the Evidence Bible quote of the week, D.L. Moody. When we're dealing with death, what happens after we die? What do you think it is? Speaking about the gospel in Christ, can you do that at funerals? I mean, it seems to me that would be an ideal time to talk about it, but it's such a sensitive time because obviously it goes upon their loved one.
Certainly.
And they want to ask the question, well, where did he go? Where did my wife go? How do you circumnavigate away from the person who died and go on to that person?
I think, to answer your question, yes, it's a perfect time. It is the topic of the day. It's a topic that is on everybody's mind in attendance, and it's a perfect opportunity to talk about it. Obviously, it's got to be done with a lot of tact, a lot of grace, and it's got to be, it's a very delicate situation, but it is a perfect time to talk about it. It's what everybody in the room is thinking about.
Do you think it's the elephant in the room, that people begin to think about themselves and nobody's talking about themselves? They're all talking about this guy who apparently is a great person, and everybody hears, you go to a funeral, everybody says that this person's in heaven. I went to a funeral where a friend of my brother's, I knew him from high school a little bit, but he hung out with my brother. The pastor got up there to speak, and he said, "Hey, this guy's in hell. This guy rejected Christ. I was just whoa, this guy
I've
is
not seen that
telling it
before.
like it is.
Really?
You know what I mean? But you typically don't hear that at funerals.
No, you hear the opposite.
Yeah, you sure do.
Even
don't
when you suspect it's not true.
Yeah.
And more times than not, what you hear in relation to that is what a great person he or she was, and that's why they're in heaven.
Right.
But I think that's a great segue as well. You know, if somebody is a believer, they're not in heaven because of their works here. And we can talk about why they are. And if they're not, you don't necessarily need to go to, the topic of where they are specifically, but where that person you're talking to is going to go and what their assurance is.
Yeah.
Or
Brad,
could be.
what are your thoughts, Brad? How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, obviously, a funeral is a great opportunity to bring up the subject. More importantly, I think it would be great to kind of precede that event altogether and talk to the people that we love who are alive. The question is, where are they going? And I think no greater litmus test is there than to see their response to the gospel. As we present the gospel to them, they will either see their need for the Savior and respond appropriately, or they will reject, and we will continue to present the gospel to them in the hope that one day they will repent and trust the Savior. So I say, as we have opportunity with our own family, the ones that we love the most, that we should continually reach out to them with the gospel, and the hope that we will have know where they go on the day they do die.
Amen. That brings us to the tool of the day, doesn't it, Bradley Snow?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Tool of the day is the Intelligence Test bookmark. And, you may be not like myself. It's difficult to approach people. There's no greater track than the one that you can just leave and, hope that somebody sees it. Go into a bookstore and put these in all the books you can find, or, find people who are reading it and offer them a bookmark. This actually has a great getaway time, as some of our people who reviewed it have said. And I like a track where I got some getaway time.
Yeah, those are great tracks. You go inside Barnes & Noble or Borders or someplace, and you go over to the different spiritual sections or whatever it may be, and you just start placing those inside there. And who's to say, God doesn't want to use that.
Absolutely.
God uses tracks, doesn't
Why
he?
not?
Well, so you are part of a church, Compass Bible Church, and you went down to a festival, and I believe it's one of the largest, if not the largest, fall festival, free fall festival in Orange County.
I believe it is. 20,000 people attended this year, October 31st, alternative to
20,000
Halloween.
people.
20,000 people. That was the estimate. They parked 8,000 cars, so extrapolate from there, give or take 20,000 people, which is just an incredibly huge event.
Yeah.
Obviously, a fair amount of those in attendance were Compass Bible families, but the overwhelming majority were not, and unsaved people. And it was a great opportunity for us, thanks to Jeff Libby and leadership at Compass Bible. Through Jeff's leadership, we were able to have the Good Person Test booth at the Fall Festival, and it was a huge success, I think.
Yeah,
Just
so
incredible.
So walk me through this. Here you have a festival, and you have tons of people that are going through, and it's a festive festival. They're there to have a good time. And here you are. You've got a booth that is set up, and I know that Danny Goodall was able to work it with you, and I think Debbie was even able to
That's right.
be there
They're
alongside
both
of
there.
him.
Great help.
You have this table set up, and people are just walking by. Where do you go from there? How do you get people that are walking by to come on over to your booth? Do they do that on their own? Do you have something inside your booth that is sparking their attention? Where do you go from there?
We did a couple things. As you can see, the Good Person, Are You a Good Person? Banners there, and below what you can't quite see is take the test and you'll receive a free souvenir. For us, the free souvenir was Giant Money, which is always a great draw.
Okay.
And then as we got people closer, we would ask them if they wanted to take a lie detector test. And you can have a lot of fun with that. So we used a little small handheld lie detector test, and we'd simply ask people, would you like to take a lie detector test? Have you ever taken a lie detector test? They'd say no, and I'd say, are you lying to me? And right away it breaks the ice. And
There's Debbie right there.
There's Debbie helping out, taking someone through the lie detector test. And you can see the reaction. That's a common reaction.
Right. She's having a good time.
She really is. And so it was the icebreaker for us. But from there, we would move directly into a survey that we had. And you can see Jeff Libby there in the center taking somebody through the Good Person Test with a clipboard and a pen and just asking the questions. This is a tremendous opportunity for people who are not all that comfortable with one-on-one encounters, because the good person test in written form, in a survey form, is very non-threatening to the person who's receiving it and taking the test, but it keeps you on track as well. And it's a great opportunity for a church to involve people who are not yet, who want to be involved in evangelism, but don't yet maybe have a lot of experience with it. This was a huge hit for us. We were full of people at that booth all night long, and we had some great one-on-one conversations. And I think hopefully this grows into something even larger at Compass Bible in terms of an organized effort to take this on the road, so to speak.
So if somebody is maybe reluctant to approach someone, they say, man, I have a really hard time breaking the ice. Well, this booth is doing that for you. It's breaking the ice.
It truly is.
And people, now, do they know what they're getting themselves into when they approach the booth?
Absolutely not.
They don't?
Absolutely not. No, they have no clue.
Does it get confrontational?
It never did. Not once. Not once. And we had literally dozens of people who came to the booth throughout the 4 hours we were there. And we never had a single person say no to the transition from the lie detector test to would you like to take the good person test in that survey. Not a single person, not a single confrontation. Very well received. And again, the overwhelming majority of people who came to us had a variety of different opinions on salvation and their faith and backgrounds and history, things of that nature. But it was a very smooth transition. So we never had a single issue all night.
Well, how many people would you say end up showing up to talk to you guys, as opposed to maybe how many tracts that you hand out? Do you hand out more tracts than you do?
We definitely handed out more tracts. Danny is a tract handing out machine, basically, and everybody who walked by, it seemed like, got a giant money or big money.
Got the
tract.
free souvenir without.
Pretty much, yeah. In some cases, folks are just walking by. They have children in their arms. They have kids. They're hightailing it back to their car, or they're just coming in. Our booth was positioned very near the entrance and the food tables and the food service. So that was great for us. We were set apart from the other activities and right next door to an information booth, so that the logistics mattered.
Right. So how many people would you say you guys talked to over the course of how long? You're there for 2 hours?
4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Okay.
4 hours. 5 to 9, hundreds.
Hundreds.
I'm sure of it.
Well, take that in comparison if you go out on a Friday night to witness. And
exactly.
Not doing open air. Obviously, you can reach that amount of people. But one-on-one, you won't get that amount of people.
No.
And how many people work the booth?
There were always a minimum of 3 of us at the booth. So sometimes there would be more, but a minimum of 3. And I don't think there was a single time when at least one of us wasn't talking to somebody, and more times than not, all 3 of us were.
You know what I like about it is you can have an individual who's kind of maybe sitting on the outskirts, listening to the conversations. Maybe he has the opportunity to answer a question that you may not have an answer for and be able to interject. Or maybe if you begin to get confrontational yourself and think that, it's a fight against their worldview, as opposed to we're just in a spiritual battle.
Sure.
You can kind of roam from conversation to conversation, and there's already that instant respect. Enter into my conversation because this is what you guys are doing. You're all together. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the benefit of an event like this is people would come up in groups, in small groups, 4 to 6 people. So that's why I said we were able to reach with only 3 people in the booth for the most part during the 4-hour period. We were able to reach, I think, hundreds of people because there would be groups of 4 and 6 people come up, and they would all hear the same message at the same time.
That's amazing. And Brad, now you came from Texas, ultimately via Oklahoma, but have you ever used the booth? I've never used the booth scenario. I talk about how successful it is because I hear the results of it being successful. But have you ever personally tried the booths, maybe out in Texas or Oklahoma yourself? Yeah,
we actually, kept a calendar of events and planned ahead for as many events as that we could set up booths. Now, oftentimes a lot of these events do include a booth cost, so it's a great way to get your church involved too, to help come up with the funds to be able to get these booths. But the booth is great, especially it was great for me in particular because I do have a fear of approaching people and engaging people just like we do every Friday night. And with a booth, people are approaching you. And, at Living Waters, we actually provide a lot of the resources that we used. We used the Are You a Good Person banner, get a free souvenir. And the souvenirs we gave were like the 10 Commandment coins and the giant hundreds and the $1 million bills. And these souvenirs also were a draw for people to see and, want to check out what we had going on. And it's like Alan said, we would talk to people by the hundreds. And it was very easy transition because usually we had either a questionnaire or just, a planned conversation that we would engage these people. And man, I can't highly recommend it enough. If there are events going on in your town, get involved with it and get a booth started because you will find it's a great way also to introduce people in your church to biblical evangelism, because either they can just, come alongside you, stand there. They're not walking around all day. They're not getting tired. And there's a lot of fun usually at these events as well. And they can see what you do, as well as, it's a great way to teach and train somebody in evangelism, because, like I said, they're coming up to you and you're having these conversations. So, yeah, definitely find an event in your area and get involved with a booth.
And moving from that booth evangelism to maybe witnessing to individual, right on topic here, we get an email from Gina, all right? And she says, I have an elderly neighbor whom I shared the gospel with a few months ago. And during our conversation, I tried to ask the questions to see where she stood on Christianity. I asked if she'd ever lied, cheated, etc. And the response to every question I would ask was basically, I don't really like talking about religion. I kept plugging away, trying to get the message across, and asked more questions to try and get some feedback, but every answer was, I don't really like talking about religion. I believe I even pointed out that I wasn't even talking about religion, but about a relationship. We do that sometimes. But nothing I said could take the conversation any further. I was frustrated. It was very one-sided. My question is that when I visit with her again, should I honor her request and not talk to her about it, but just keep telling her the gospel? This is what I need. I need to have suggestions about what I could say to her to get her to open up or really think about her salvation. I'd given her a book about the gospel. She did read it, but she didn't say much about it. Do you have any books you can suggest, perhaps, that might help? She does like to read, and anything I give her, she does seem to likely read. So I guess maybe we have two scenarios here. One, what do you do when you come across an individual who says, you know what, I don't like talking about religion? And then second, do you have any books for Gina that she can recommend either reading herself or passing on to her elderly neighbor?
I would answer both questions with the same answer. The book I would ask Gina to read is Greg Koukl's book, Tactics.
Great book.
And I would use that tactic, the Colombo Tactic, with this person who doesn't want to talk about religion, and simply, in the strategy there, if you read Tactics, if you've read it, you're familiar with the Colombo Tactic, and that is you never answer a statement or a question with a statement, I should say, if a question will do. And this is a perfect scenario for that. You can simply say, no, you know what, I don't like talking about religion either. Why don't you like to talk about religion?
Oh, that's good.
And let them justify why they don't like talking about religion. You may not be able to get where you want to go in one conversation in this situation, but at least you steer the conversation in a different path as opposed to you providing defense for your side of the argument. They have to justify where they're coming from in terms of why they don't like talking about religion. And eventually, with Tactics, folks are led to a point where they talk themselves out of their own position.
Right, so as opposed to maybe providing books for the elderly neighbor, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. You might even suggest giving her a booklet, something
I would give her
smaller
Why
to read.
Christianity.
Our little
It's
booklet.
very short, very sweet, very focused, and very easy to read. And I think it's a great place to begin anyway.
Yeah.
Very non-threatening.
Yeah, Brad, what do you think? Any advice for Gina?
Well, I mean, religion can be kind of that put-off topic that people just want to avoid. And I think Alan hit on the head, just about asking questions, getting them to open up. Because you might find out that the obstacles are easy to resolve if you just get them to, share what is going on with them. The books, I think Ray has really done a great job of creating some books that kind of turn up the heat slowly. They're not obvious gospel presentations in the books. Like you'll have like just kind of looked it up myself. 101 of the dumbest things people have done. 101 things husbands do to annoy their wives. These are fun books, but ultimately present the gospel to these to the reader. And so maybe a couple of books like that. And I definitely think the book that Alan recommended is a definitely good choice as well.
John Piper has a good book, Don't Waste Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And inside there he talks about an elderly couple that retires, and then they go and start collecting seashells on the shore, on the beaches. And he goes, well, what are you going to do when you get to heaven? You're going to go over to God and you're going to say, look at my seashell collection, Lord. Mm-hmm. God's not impressed, and we need to finish well. Yep. It may be perhaps this elderly neighbor doesn't want to talk about religion and things of God because she realizes that death is started to knock on the door, that we all have an appointment with death. If I'm at maybe a university or I'm talking to a younger person perhaps, I just start asking them a couple of questions. I really like what you said. Hey, I don't like talking about religion either. Why don't you like talking about religion? I mean, you're going to engage in a conversation that continually why or how do you know, or those questions are very pivotal. I like to ask the person, hey, so do you have a savings account? Yep. Why do you have a savings account? Well, because I'm planning for the future. You know, so do you have a life insurance plan? Yep. Why? Because I want to plan for the future and I want to make sure that my kids are taken care of. So planning for the future is an admirable thing. Why are you going to this school? Well, because I want to have a good job. Why do you want to have a good job? You know, think through these things. Everything we do is in light of the future to some degree, unless you're dealing with instantaneous sin, instant gratification. I want to do these things. But even with that, there's certain sins that people didn't commit. There were sins that I wouldn't commit as a non-believer because I was fearful of the ramifications that would come with those things. You know, we think through that. So you want to plan for the future. So where are you going to be 20 years from now? 40 years from now, 100 years from now. Plan for the future. Wise is the man who plans for the present. Wiser is the man who plans for the future, and wisest is the man who plans for eternity. So, you know, and if they still don't want to listen, hey, can I leave you with this? And you give them a track or a book, and you're off. And
I think a natural transition from that discussion about the future is, regardless of what you do in terms of planning, retirement, life insurance, school, all the things you mentioned and more, there is only one thing that is absolutely certain about your future.
Yeah.
Your life is going to end.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it happens in 5 minutes from now, when you leave this office and maybe you would get in an auto accident, or 55 years from now. Regardless of when it happens, you're going to think it's too soon. And it's not too soon to plan for that future, that inevitable future that is the one thing that is absolutely certain in your future.
You know, I thought of another book, actually. Oops, sorry. Hey. You know, actually, I was thinking, what about the Bible, you know? Gospel of John. You know, it sounds like this woman is actually willing to read whatever you give her. And I think the gospel itself would be great, you know, for her to read. You know, it has everything we want her to know. And I would be hopeful that if I gave her one, she'd actually read it.
And that brings us on into the Hollywood Minute with Brad Pitt. I haven't had a chance to witness to Brad. I'd love to be able to share with him. He once said that he believes himself to be 80% atheist and 20% agnostic. I don't think anybody really knows, and until we die, there's really no sense in even talking about it. Well, how do you think he lives his life when he says there's no need in planning for the future? Here's a man that doesn't want to talk about religion. We had a friend of ours on the show here. Well, he was in the audience not too long ago, and he wrote about his encounter when he had a chance to share a gospel track with Brad Pitt. They worked together on the movie Moneyball. Well, he ended up getting fired. Apparently, Brad didn't like receiving that gospel track. And I was told that Brad's parents possibly could be believers. Don't know the validity to that. But here is the Hollywood Minute with Brad Pitt.
Did you know that Brad Pitt said that he was probably 20% atheist and 80% agnostic? He said, I don't think anyone really knows. Religion works. It's something to explain the world and tell you there's something bigger than you. And it's going to be all right in the end. It works because it's comforting. I grew up believing in it, and it worked for me in whatever my little personal high school crisis was, but it didn't last for me. He added, I didn't understand this idea of a God who says, you have to acknowledge me, you have to say that I'm the best, and then I'll give you eternal happiness. If you don't, then you don't get it. End of quote. Wow, how wrong can you get? Find out the truth by going to livingwaters.com and clicking on Save Yourself Some Pain. It's free and it will help you. My name is Ray Comfort, and this is the Hollywood Minute.
All right. Well, there's Brad Pitt. He looks a lot like Brad Snow.
He does. He does.
Yeah, not as
I get them
quite
confused
good-looking.
often.
You know, let's go back just for a second to the booth that you had set up. You use a survey.
We did.
We sell a survey, but you know, there's surveys that are out there that are very well done. If somebody wants to get the survey that you use, I would imagine that they can contact you.
They can simply email us. We'll send them the very same survey we used. And I thought it was a great tool because what we literally filled in, checked in the boxes, circled the answers, checked the boxes. Each question had a Bible verse attached to it. On the back, there were Bible verses. And then we would ask them to take that survey with them and tell them. We would ask if they had a Bible. If they didn't have a Bible, we gave them a Bible. If they had a Bible, we said, go home, read these verses. read these specific verses as they pertain to the test we just took.
So if you want that survey, email us at onthebox@livingwaters.com. So onthebox@livingwaters.com, that is the email address if you want to see the survey that the team had used down at the festival. Well, this moves on into an email that we got from Richard. How would you respond to someone who tells you that they are afraid to pray? Perhaps they have fear in how God would go about answering their prayers. I've got all kinds of thoughts on this. Brad, we want to jump it over to you. How about somebody has a fear on how God is going to answer their prayer? Maybe they think God is going to answer it in a way that they don't exactly want the answer to go that way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think sometimes we approach prayer as, to just get what we want. And clearly she thinks this prayer is going to yield the result she doesn't. So she's going to avoid it out of fear. And I think ultimately she needs to, get into the mind of God and His Word, because ultimately we need to pray in what God would have us want and have, that our desires would match His. And so her approach to prayer probably just needs to change first. And I think, there she would have, a change of attitude towards her approaching God in prayer.
Right. I think that this person, Richard, who wrote in, he's perhaps thinking that God is a tyrant of some sort. I think that just comes from a lack of fellowship and communion with God. Get to know God, hang out inside the Bible, and you're going to come to the place where you say, I must decrease, He must increase, not my will, but your will. I don't necessarily want to drink this cup of suffering or sorrow, but ultimately, God, I know you're in control. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I ultimately know who holds my tomorrows. Sure. So I can face this tragedy, this potential crazy disunity, whatever it may be, head on, knowing that God will uphold you with His righteous right hand. And with that, we are all out of time. Stay tuned for tomorrow. I'm told it's going to be the best show ever. Ray and Easy are back with some crazy, amazing, exciting news at that time. So God bless you. Go serve your King. The buck stops here. And pray for our president.
For questions about On the Box with Ray Comfort, or to submit questions for future shows, please email onthebox@livingwaters.com. That's onthebox@livingwaters.com. On the Box with Ray Comfort is an outreach of Living Waters. For more resources to inspire and equip you to fulfill the Great Commission, check out livingwaters.com or call toll-free 1-800-437-1893. Now go and preach the gospel.